Hi BookTube, and welcome to a tag video. I subscribe to a channel called Ben Reads Good. That's just me and 4,000 other people, right? But anyway, I really enjoyed his recent video where he created one of those stacks of books. I mean, BookTube creators love them. We could call BookTube StackTube, really, for all the thumbnails of people that I see holding up these massive stacks of books to the camera. But his stack was a shameful one. Not shameful in the self-loathing sense, but more sort of slightly sheepish. Man, I hope nobody ever asks me why I haven't read these books. That kind of shame. He had 6 categories to describe the books in his stack, and he turned the categories into questions for anybody who wanted to make and talk about their own book shame. And I think these kind of confessions do me a lot of good. It was a year ago that I talked about 3 books that I tried to start reading more than once, and I never finished them. And then I made a commitment on video to read them, and wow, I did it. So I think promises that you make on camera, I think they're a great shot in the arm. So let's see what happens if I reveal more shameful reading secrets. Question 1. What book has been on your shelf the longest without being read? Well, I couldn't be scientifically certain of this, but there is one book. It's been up there so long that I'm not sure measurement really matters anymore. So here I am about to reveal it. It is The Foundation Trilogy by Isaac Asimov. Now I'll tell you a funny story about me. Back in the 1990s, don't ask me why, I was convinced that I wanted to become a science fiction author. Space opera was one of my favorite things. Now this is funny because, as I have admitted, I have read very, very little science fiction or fantasy. Now I did self-publish a manuscript, but I never had success seeking conventional publication of more than short stories. And that's because the book manuscript, it was very derivative. Over time, I realized that that's what I really enjoyed writing on the fiction side, derivative fiction. However, because I wasn't really into science fiction, fantasy, television, movies, etc., I didn't know fan fiction existed until 2010. Yeah, late to the party, that's me. But it was a fantastic discovery. I set up an account on Archive of Our Own, and I wrote 500,000 words of Star Trek fan fiction over 8 years. And just like here on BookTube, I built up this lovely, small, regular group of readers, and I had fantastic conversations with them. But back to Isaac Asimov. Sorry, back on topic. I would have purchased this volume in the 1990s. I pointed the wrong way, didn't I? Anyway, you can see where the book is, even if I am struggling. So I must have bought it with other books because I was intending to start this great science fiction reading project. The other books, whatever they were, I must have unhauled them without even reading them. I don't know why I hung on to this. But it all feels, when I think back, like steps in a journey to confirming who I really am as a reader. That I'm not a person who's going to set up home in a particular genre and go deep. Read those genres comprehensively or research one particular subject area exhaustively. It was good to establish that I prefer to sample books across all genres, and then let myself do that, even if it means I'm never going to be an expert on any subject or genre or author. Question 2. Are there any books outside your comfort zone that you're desperate to read? Yes. James Joyce. At university, we were introduced to Joyce by studying Dubliners, which is his collection of short stories. But these stories are not like Ulysses or A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. They're not attempting to capture that mental jumble, that storm of mind activity, what became known as stream of consciousness. They're more conventional narratives in Dubliners. And we did look at passages from Ulysses, almost dipping our toes in the water. They were reproduced in our course textbooks. But Joyce's novels, they weren't required reading. And along with Ulysses or Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, I want to reread Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway. I read that, I would say, almost 20 years ago. And I got through it, but I didn't really understand what I was reading. I feel that I'm more ready now to get something from these kind of stream of consciousness novels. And I've also talked about how much I've wanted to find a way to cope with reading horror. I have never read anything by these three authors: H.P. Lovecraft, Shirley Jackson, or Dan Simmons. I mean, I've already talked about Stephen King. It's just, the list could go on, but we've got to keep it reasonable. But I should at least pick a well-known title by one of those four authors and just get on with it. Question 3. Are there any series you'd like to finish but haven't? I'm not crazy about fiction written in series, and that's mainly because it ties me down. One author, one genre, one style of writing for far longer than I like being tied down. I think series are written for the kind of reader who's really into a particular genre, particular author, and so obviously you want as much new content as you can get your mitts on. Whereas me, I like to dip in and out. So at first I might be with one book that's in one genre with one author, and then I want to just drift off in a completely different direction. So I usually don't want to commit to starting a series, let alone finishing it. But occasionally I break my own rule. I did it for The Lord of the Rings. I did it for Stieg Larsson's The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo trilogy. I did it for the Hunger Games books, and I did it for Twilight. Now, Mallory Blackman, her series of books, I've read the first, Noughts and Crosses. It was absolutely fantastic. And so I do want to read that series as soon as I can buy books. And unfortunately, it has to wait till then, because I checked my library apps to see what they stocked. They did not have the second, third, or fourth books, but they do have the first, which I've already read, and the fifth and the sixth. Seems weird, but there you go. I realize I've forgotten to say anything about the photographs. I do that a lot. The first photograph that you saw was Birmingham City Library, which I've been to visit. And what you're looking at now is the interior of the Shakespeare Room, which is up on the roof of Birmingham City Library. It's like a little cupola. You wouldn't realize what it was from the outside because it looks very modern from the outside, much like the building. But then you step inside and you step back in time into this lovely wooden room, and the bookcases are all full of very rare editions of Shakespeare. They might be first editions. I wouldn't know. I'm not really into rare books, but I am into Shakespeare. So anyway, question 4. Are there any books related to your background, heritage, or history that you feel like you should have read? Well, the death of Alice Munro got me thinking about Canadian authors I've not read, or Canadian authors where I've read one book and I probably should try at least one more. This is only a small selection, by the way, these authors that I'm going to name, but I haven't read anything by Jan Martel, Mordecai Rickler, Dion Borde, Rohit on Mystery, and I only read one Canadian First Nations author. That's no good. I need to try someone like Joseph Boyden or Tommy Orange. Now, I own 3 books by these authors, so I could read them anytime. And they are in order. Let's see, what do we got? The Life of Pi by Jan Martel. We've got A Fine Balance by Rohit on Mystery. And we've got There by Tommy Orange. Question 5. Which book does it feel like everybody has read, but you haven't? Well, there's been a recent title. I mean, who hasn't talked about this on BookTube? It is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I've watched so many reviews. I didn't manage to buy it before my book buying ban, but there's a reason for that. Now, I've read 2 other Kingsolver novels. I've read The Poisonwood Bible and The Lacuna, found both of those very satisfying reads. Demon Copperhead, as everybody knows, is a modern rewrite of David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, except it's set in the Appalachian Mountains of the United States in the 20th century. Most reviewers hadn't read Dickens' novel, if I remember correctly, but the few that had, they said, oh, not necessary to have done the Dickens bit before you go on and read Demon Copperhead. But, you see, I would want to. In fact, I'm very tempted to try reading both books side by side, in the same way that I did with Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey, and then there was a rewrite version by Val McDermott. I'd love to do something very similar to that. Question 6. Is there an author, and you're ashamed because you've never read anything by them? Oh yeah. This is the problem when you study English literature, is that you end up neglecting other people's literature. And I'm thinking right now, because I could think of a lot of places, but I'm thinking of American literature. I'm very deficient. And here's 2 great American authors and I've read nothing that they've ever written. Okay? Wait for it. William Faulkner. Herman Melville. You know, strangely, it feels good to feel shame when shame seems appropriate. And appropriate for me, at least, right? Because I say, I like to read widely. I say, I like to read authors or books whose reputation has held up over decades. Well, you know that it's good for me to feel shame about never having read anything by Faulkner or Melville. I need to read some of these. I own a paperback copy of Moby Dick. I was thinking of saving that novel. I was kind of thinking, oh, wouldn't it be cool to read that novel the way I've been reading Middlemarch, very, very slowly. I was thinking of doing like Moby Dick meditations or Melville meditations. But Middlemarch is going to take me some time. Now, 2025 is going to be the year that I'm thinking I'm going to tackle fewer books so I can tackle longer books. Now, I think that'd be a great year to meet Ishmael and the Great White Whale. And that, dear BookTube, is my stack of shame. You know, I wrote this script and I got on camera without thinking of anybody to tag. But Ben reads good. He's got loads of subscribers, doesn't he? So there's this tag. It's going to get going. I'm sure of it. If any of my regular viewers have a stack of shame that they're willing to admit to, please consider this as an invitation to clear your reading conscience. Okay? I am off because I've got to write another fiction review for you guys, and I'll be back in a few days' time. Until then, happy reading. Take care. Bye-bye.